What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at Nerd Tees. Ooh, nice glassware today. And welcome to week 13, hopefully lucky week 13, Halloween week 13 of my weekly CFL football pick show for the 2021 CFL season and postseason. And of course, you'll notice we are in some different digs this week. It is a rainy, crummy day outside, and it's also not very bright. So if you watch my videos, you know I like to use natural light. I much prefer to use natural light. I think it brings out the brown in my eyes. But we can't really do that today because there's really not that much natural light. So I'm downstairs in the old podcast studio, in the old Library Chess Productions production studio to bring you the episode this week. Mixed bag of results in week 12, but we certainly weren't underwater. Even money, 6-6 overall. Did go 3-1 picking the game straight up, which now actually has me 4 games above 500 picking the league straight up this year. And if you've been following the league this year, you know that that is almost a Herculean feat. Like, it has been very difficult to pick this league this year. I feel good about being 4 games over 500 there on the season. Even money against the spread as well. So man, I was 5-3 against the spread. I just gave it all back on the totals, like has been the case for much of the season. So 25-21 straight up, 21-25 against the spread, so only 4 games underwater against the spread, and 19-27 on the totals. All in all, I'm 65-73. I'm only 8 games away from breaking 50% here, which, look at how I started the first 3 weeks of the season. The 2 of the first 3 weeks, I went 2-10. So if I can pull this thing back up to 50% well ahead of the playoffs, I think I'll be in really good shape. That is the goal over the next couple of weeks. And who knows, maybe we get it all back this week. Kind of treaded water once again in CFL fantasy football in week 12. Moved back down to 18th place in the official Atlantic Schooners Fantasy Football League out of 82. 69.7 points in week 12. Kind of a middling week for me. Only 918.1 overall. My week 12 MVP, definitely Toronto wide receiver Kurleigh Gittens Jr. And he had basically his breakout game on his CFL career. 8 catches for $116 through the air. Was good for 19.6 fantasy points. He's the MVP from week 12. And my week 13 lineup for CFL fantasy is right in front of your eyes right now. We are stacking some Toronto Argos this week in a smash spot against a BC Lions defense that has been terminally struggling over the last month or so. We are stacking McLeod Bethel-Thompson at quarterback with Kurleigh Gittens Jr., who we just mentioned. And we're also going with Chandler Worthy in the flex. These are 2 low-cost Argos options who are very much involved in the pass game. So I think I'm going to have some decent results there. The running backs were an interesting thing for me to look at because I thought, oh my gosh, William Stanback coming off that 200-yard game, he's a must start this week. But based on the money, I think I'm going to get similar results from James Wilder, which is why I went with Wilder this week. Kadeem Carey feels like a smash spot as well against the REDBLACKS. I went with Dunbar from Hamilton as my other wide receiver because there's no Braylon Addison this week for the Ticats. That just means those targets are going to be spread around, and I think Dunbar has already a pretty decent piece of that Masoli offense. Masoli had himself a great game last week. Now, I do have to take a second before I finish here to shout out my good friend now, Ryan Coop, at the Canadian Football Fantasy Mix. I mentioned him, I think, a week or 2 ago. I chatted with him on Twitter here back and forth a little bit, and just kind of bounced some fantasy ideas back and forth off of him for this week. It was nice to get his input. He feels like a content creator very much like myself. The link to the Canadian Football Fantasy Mix is down in the pinned comment below on this video. Please check out his channel. Please give him some support. If you love this league, if you love content creators like me, give Ryan a look at the Canadian Football Fantasy Mix. It'll be worth your time. For the Week 13 picks, we went special. We're rocking our Pat McAfee, it's great to be great, it must suck to suck hoodie. Wouldn't know anything about sucking, I've been great my whole life. Week 13, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are on the natural bye this week. All of the lines this week are going to be coming courtesy of Bet Regal because the rest of the books are cowards. We've got Calgary in Ottawa taking on the REDBLACKS, where the REDBLACKS are a 10.5-point dog. We got Hamilton in Edmonton to take on the Elks. Elks are 4.5-point dogs in that game. We got the BC BC Lions in Toronto, who are 3.5-point favorites at home, are the Argos. And Saski is in Montreal this week. Montreal, 1.5-point dog at home. Nothing but crossover games this week, West versus East. Let's start in Ottawa, that Stampeders REDBLACKS game. Calgary dropping the game against Saskatchewan last week, 20-17. I went against my smash spot there because the Roughriders, oh my God. The Riders had a couple of smash spots and I picked against them because of how Calgary had handled them the previous 2 weeks. So I went against my smash spot. That was a problem. Very tough to beat a team 3 straight games and they just were not able to do it in this one. I thought the Stamps did most things right in this game. Carey had 15 carries, 62 yards and a touchdown. They had 5 receivers that had at least 4 targets in the pass game. I mentioned specifically about how they couldn't let the Riders dominate them on the line of scrimmage. The sacks in this game were even 4-4. Now, they did go over on that sack prop that I mentioned last week, but they still tied 4-4. So they weren't dominated on the line of scrimmage, but Bo Levi-Mitchell threw 3 interceptions. So they got enough pressure on Bo that he made some mistakes, and they made them pay for it on the 3rd and final interception, and it was enough for Saski to hold on in that game. So obviously there's a lot of areas for Calgary to improve, and what better opponent to improve against than the Ottawa REDBLACKS? Calgary has a ton of smash spots in this game. There's at least 4 of them. It includes the fact that the Stamps are the number 3 scoring offense in the CFL. They're also the number 3 scoring defense in the CFL, and they're going up against the number 9 ranked team in both of those respects, that being the Ottawa REDBLACKS. Also number 3 versus number 9 in terms of time of possession. Calgary possesses the football a lot more than Ottawa does. There's also the number 1 pass offense in the CFL is Bo Levi-Mitchell and the Calgary Stampeders. Jake Mayer obviously had a lot to do with that while he was playing. And it's the number 7 pass defense. So there's a ton of smash spots here for the Stamps. I think you know where I'm going with this game. For the REDBLACKS, 2-9, losers of 4 straight games. They lost against Hamilton in Hamilton, only putting a field goal on the board, losing 32-3. And welcome back to the full-blown tire fire. Would you like the same seats as last time? It's also rather apropos that I'm wearing a Pat McAfee hoodie because one of his favorite personalities in football, Quack, 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 Duck Hodges, got some playing time for the REDBLACKS in that game last week. He did not look great. I'm not sure what game people were watching where they think Duck Hodges is a better option at quarterback than Caleb Evans. Not that Caleb Evans has been great, because obviously, I criticized him last week. He certainly has not been great over the last month's worth of games, but he's a better option than Duck Hodges. I'm interested to see who gets the start here. QB1 obviously is to be determined with this REDBLACKS team. They had 5 total interceptions in that game last week. I did want to shout out a positive for Ottawa. Kenny Stafford has come into that receiving core, and he's made an impact. He's played 5 games. He went 0 for last week, but in the 4 games prior to that, 12 catches for $195 and 2 touchdowns. In Ottawa terms, that is like CFL All-Star level. Like, he has come in and made a significant impact. They just now need everything else. The defense isn't clicking the way it was before. The offense has completely sputtered. They don't know who their quarterback is. They don't know who their RB1 should be, because it should be Timothy Flanders rather than DeLance Turner, if he's healthy, of course. So they got Kenny Stafford. That's a good thing. They just need everything else. Obviously, this is the biggest mismatch of the week, and it's the biggest mismatch of the week for a reason, because Ottawa is still the Ottawa REDBLACKS. We are on Calgary this week, obviously. Calgary on the road in Ottawa beats the REDBLACKS. On the line, like I mentioned, Calgary's laying 10.5 points as a road favorite, a massive line to have to lay on the road. Worth pointing out, league-wide, like, these lines are not given out very often, lines with double digits. It's only happened 5 times this year. Teams are 3-2 covering those lines. I have no problem laying the 10.5 points here on Calgary. This is a multiple possession game as far as I'm concerned. So we're going to go ahead and lay the 10.5 and not think too much about it. Total in the game is only 42.5. It's a low total, not a crazy low total the way the CFL has gone so far this year, but it is a low total. I'm going to have to go over on this one. It's a play on the number rather than a play on anything else. I do think Ottawa will score some points. I don't think they're going to score a lot. Calgary has the potential to score a lot, and I just don't really want to have to sweat an under on a number that low. So we're going to stay over 42.5 points in Calgary, Ottawa. Let's go Stamps 31, REDBLACKS 17. Let's go to Edmonton now. Ticats and Elks. The Elks obviously making some more quarterback news this week, which we will talk about here in a minute. For Hamilton, now even the record at 5-5, winning last week against Ottawa, the aforementioned 32-3 game. Nothing quite like having to play the REDBLACKS to cure what ails you. In absolutely every phase in this game, the Ticats looked like the Ticats. Like, Jeremiah Masoli was monstrous. The receivers were good. They established a bit of a run game. The defense played great. In every phase, this looked like the Ticats that you expect to see. But how much do you trust it? It's tough to trust it at all because of the competition that it came against. Hamilton does have a smash spot worth talking about here. They're the number 2 scoring defense in the CFL, the second best defense at keeping points off the board, going up against a bottom 2 scoring offense in Edmonton. They're number 8 in the CFL. And this is the first game where both teams actually have a smash spot. So it'll be interesting because the smash spots, teams that had smash spots last week, went 4-0. I think I mentioned this on Twitter that I may have stumbled on something here, but this is one of those matchups where each team has won, so it's a matter of who establishes their smash spot more. As I mentioned, no Braylon Addison for the Ticats this week, which should mean that Dunbar, Tim White, kind of the lesser receiving options, Jalen Acklin, I think would be an excellent option in fantasy this week. That's just those targets spread out among those players, because you can't trust Brandon Banks, especially for the money you have to pay for him in fantasy. It's just not worth the price. The Edmonton Elks come into this game off of their bye, so they should be well rested at 2-7, losers of 5 straight games. Their last game was the loss against Winnipeg back in week 11, 10-point loss, 26-16. But considering how Edmonton has played this year and how Winnipeg has played this year, only losing by 10 points is like an accomplishment. They genuinely did some good things in that game. They won the game on first down. They only took 3 penalties for 28 yards, so they were very disciplined. They generated 4 quarterback sacks on Zach Collaros. They did some good things in that game. Now it just remains to be seen whether they can turn this into trends or if it was just a one-off. But genuinely, this game was tight. It was even tighter than the final score would have you believe. At 9.5 minutes left to go, this is a tie football game. And the worst dropped interception that I think I have ever seen by Grimes. Just like, here it comes, and he just looks and sees in front of him just green grass. Like there's nobody going to catch him. They're about to take the lead. Blah, 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 blah. They had that opportunity. They let it go, which sometimes happens, but what matters is how you respond to something like that, and they responded by just completely emotionally collapsing in that game. They had absolutely nothing for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers beyond that point, and it was Winnipeg's game from there. Like I mentioned, both of the teams in this matchup have a smash spot alert. The Elks, a very good, in fact, the number 1 best pass defense in the CFL, statistically anyway, so far this year, going up against a bottom 2 pass offense, and that's the Hamilton Ticats. They have not, other than their last game, no matter who it's been for the Ticats at quarterback, they really have not generated much through the air. So this is a really good secondary. It'll be interesting to see if Masoli, kind of the same as with the Elks, is this a trend that's developing now with Masoli of these really good games, or was last week a one-off? And as I mentioned, the Elks making more quarterback news, trading for Nick Arbuckle, now the QB1 in Edmonton. I don't know whether he plays in this game or not. This may be one more start for Cornelius while Arbuckle comes in and kind of learns the offense. So it's probably Cornelius this week, I would have to think, but that's like a clear move for 2022 and beyond. If the trading of Trevor Harris was not an indicator that Edmonton was kind of tanking the rest of the season, I think bringing in a new quarterback that it will definitely be your starting quarterback later would certainly be the sign that the rest of this season doesn't really matter to Edmonton. The Elks this year have neither won a game at home nor won a game against an East Division opponent. They're trying to do both of those this week. I think they will do neither. So we are definitely on Hamilton in this game. Let's take the Ticats in Edmonton to beat the Elks. On the line, Hamilton only laying 4.5 points as a road favorite here. My methodology, my way that I do picks, especially for this league, is telling me to take the points in this game. And with the number 1 secondary, I can understand why it would be tempting. It's only 4.5 points. I think I've got to lay the points. And you know what? If this pick is wrong, I full well should have trusted my own methodology, but in this one, I kind of feel like fading myself a little bit. I'm going to be laying the points here on the Ticats. I don't think it's going to be massive one way or the other. Like, this is going to be a sweat for me, I think. I'm going to lay the points with the Ticats 4.5. Total in the game set at 43. This is another play on the number rather than a play on anything else. I'm not going to sweat an under on a 43 with a team whose offense played really well last week. Defense on the other side that is statistically good, but kind of questionable, has been questionable its last few games. I think we're going to take the over on this one. Let's take over 43 points in Hamilton, Edmonton. I'm going to go Ticats 27, Edmonton 21. And I'll take this opportunity now, as I always do, to shout out my great friends and sponsors at NerdTees. Nerdtees.ca is where you need to go. Dozens and dozens of incredible loose leaf tea blends right from the smack dab middle of Woodstock, Ontario, Canada. And you're going to want to use my promo code BWFinest, where you're going to save 15% at checkout on any order that you make. You're also going to get free shipping in Canada on any order over $100. You're going to get a really good conversion rate on the US dollar too if you're one of my CFL viewers from south of the 49th parallel. Today's blend is a Nova Scotian specialty. It is blueberry tea. It smells incredible. It tastes fantastic. And it's one of, like I said, dozens of incredible tea blends that you can find on nerdtees.ca. Promo code is BWFinest. Save you 15%. Get your free shipping. Find yourself something to love, or find someone you love something to love with the holidays fast approaching. You can do it on nerdtees.ca. You know, for as many times as I've done that plug, it's not copy. It's NerdTees didn't give me copy to read. I just kind of riff on it, and it's kind of taken on a life of its own. Let's go to Toronto now, where the 4-6 BC Lions, losers of 4 straight games, on the tail end of back-to-back road games, visit the Toronto Argonauts. BC dropping a 45-0. That's supposed to be a 0-0, 45-0 decision against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers last week. This team is completely, 100% lost without Lucky Whitehead. It is embarrassing that Michael Riley to Brian Burnham can't score points. I mentioned James Butler last week, who basically takes over as the RB1 on this team that abjectly refuses to run the football sometimes. He only had 8 touches in that game. He turned him into an okay 46 yards. That's not bad on only 8 touches. Maybe give him some more. Believe it or not, the Lions do have a smash spot in this game, and it comes in their efficiency throwing the football. Number 2 pass efficiency in the CFL, actually going up against a defense in Toronto that is the second worst at allowing a high pass efficiency to its opposing quarterbacks. I think Michael Riley will have himself a good game. Whether that generates any points or not is a matter for some debate. BC's also got to pay attention to their practice reports. A lot of injuries, a lot of did not participates in practice on Tuesday. Those included Nathan Rourke, backup quarterback, Lamar Durant, and Javon Kotoy, who are 2 pretty significant pieces in the pass offense, especially when you don't have Lucky out there. The 6-4 Toronto Argos dropped a game last week in Montreal and actually got kind of the tar beaten out of them in Montreal by 3 possessions, 37-16. The Alouettes with a big statement win in the East Division there. And their offense struggled, and it struggled versus like an average defense. Like, Montreal doesn't light the league on fire defensively, but they're also not absolute bums. Like, they're kind of middle of the road, and Toronto's offense struggled against them, and now things get dicey again in the East Division. It's literally anybody's game between those top 3 teams. But in that game, we had the aforementioned huge performance from Curly Gittens Jr., the 8 catches for $116. I think it's reasonable to feel like Curly Gittens Jr. has taken over the wide receiver 2 role on this team, probably from Davaris Daniels, if I had to think. Like, Eric Rogers, I would say, is definitely the clear-cut number 1, but Davaris Daniels had been getting the number 2 amount of targets. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think you really have to look at Curly Gittens as a top 2 receiver on this team. That's why I grabbed him in fantasy, because he's also cheap. Argos have a smash spot in this game. They are the number 2 pass offense in the CFL, going up against the single worst statistical pass defense in the CFL, that being the BC Lions. Lo and behold, why I'm stacking MBT with a couple of his affordable receivers. And it's interesting, speaking of MBT, without the sweat now, to have to sweat his backup quarterback, which was Nick Arbuckle, which was what he had been doing pretty well all season, without having to sweat that, it'll be interesting to me to see if he really steps up and says, hey guys, here's why I should have been the QB1 all along. That's what I think is going to happen. So I expect him obviously to have a massive game. The Argos have not lost a game at home this year. They're averaging 28 points in their home games. I don't think BC has any answer for that. So we're definitely on the Argos around these parts this week. Let's take Toronto at home to beat BC. Against the spread, Toronto laying the 3.5 points as a home favorite. I'm leaning more on Toronto's home record this year than I am with BC's record against the East. Because like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, I think, BC feasted on the East Division this year. They're 3-0. They're unbeaten. But they beat Ottawa back-to-back games, and then they beat Montreal back in like week 6, I think it was. So that was almost 2 months ago. So I'm putting more stock in how Toronto has played at home against a variety of opponents than how BC played specifically twice against Ottawa and once against a Montreal team that doesn't look like the Montreal team of right now. So we're definitely going to lay the points here on Toronto. Argos minus the 3.5. Total in the game set at 45.5, and I just think the offensive upside here for the Argos is going to lean me over on this game. It's a relatively big number to take an over on this year in the CFL, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. We're going to go over 45.5 points in Toronto, BC. Let's go Argos 27, Lions 20. Let's see the Lions put some points on the board this week. Worth pointing out, both teams' defenses are allowing at least 25 points or more over their last 3 games, respectively. And the last game we're going to look at here sees the Saskatchewan Roughriders traveling to Montreal to take on the Alouettes. Riders on the tail end of back-to-back road games. Winners last week in Calgary, 20-17. They fully exploited their smash spots in that game. They won the turnover battle 4-2. Like I mentioned, they generated 3 interceptions off of Bo Levi Mitchell. They absolutely killed the run game, by the way, as well in the fourth quarter. They scored in the fourth quarter to go up 20-10. Calgary completely abandoned the run game from that point. So they killed it not only by, playing well against the run. I think they only gave up like 4 yards per carry or something like that. So they played well against the run, but they completely killed the other team's momentum or desire to run the ball. And that's an important thing to do. The Riders take a measurable downtick defensively when they're away from home. When they're playing at home, they're only allowing 18 points a game. On the road, they're allowing 24. That's an extra touchdown almost. So it is a measurable downtick, but they are unbeaten against the East Division this year. So this is a really interesting, really intriguing matchup because, again, Montreal is not the team that they were a month ago. Speaking of Montreal, they are 6-4 on the season, winners of 4 straight games, one of the hottest teams in the league, coming off of that aforementioned 3-possession win against Toronto in Montreal. Officially the second hottest team in the CFL behind the Blue Bombers, demolished Argos basically from the start of the second quarter on. First quarter was kind of like a feeling out process. From that point on, the Alouettes just kind of took off running and left the Argos in their dust. This one feels good too. Smash spot victorious William Stanback, 200 some yards rushing, 203 yards rushing on 24 carries. Only got into the end zone once, which is almost shocking on that many rushing yards. They did show some predictability in the pass offense though. This could be a byproduct of, Matthew Schiltz only has a small amount of experience in this league, but he attempted 18 passes. 7 of them went to Geno. So you need more diversity in your pass offense than that. I don't think anybody else in the past game had more than 3. And I understand that they're missing BJ Cunningham, but still. You're not going to see William Stanback repeat his performance from last week this week because the Riders are, I think, the number 1 run defense in the CFL this year. But they do need a repeat, the Alouettes do, of the lessons that they could have taken from that game. Winning at the line of scrimmage, limiting your turnovers, limiting your penalties. They did a really good job of limiting their penalties in the game last week. Those are things that they need to repeat. Those are habits that need to become expectations for the Alouettes to really make a move here and maybe even compete with the top teams in this league. This feels like the ultimate dark horse Grey Cup matchup. Like, it really does, doesn't it? Like, I think most people expect Toronto to win the East. And obviously, Winnipeg has already won the West. So, like, they haven't won the West. They're going to host the West final. But everybody expects Winnipeg to be in the Grey Cup. But if Winnipeg gets upset, it seems like Saskatchewan would be one of the teams to do it, either Saski or Calgary. And if Toronto's going to get upset, look, Montreal just dominated them last week. So this feels like a dark horse Grey Cup matchup. And if that is the case, this game carries a lot more significance than I think a lot of people are giving it credit for. These teams feel so similar to me, but I'm really more impressed with the Alouettes over the last month than I am with the Riders. And that's enough for me to lean on the Alouettes here. I'm going to take the Alouettes it's a marginal upset, but it is still an upset on the line, where I'm going to take the Alouettes here. They're at home. They're getting 1.5 points at home. They're a dog at home. I'm going to take them. The other teams on the tail end of back-to-back road games, a lot of travel. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Montreal Alouettes at home to beat the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And obviously, where the Alouettes are taking 1.5 points, I'm going to take those points easily because I like them to win outright, so give me the plus 1.5. Total in the game set at 46.5 points, and I think I got to lean under on this one. Both teams in their last 3 games, respectively, are allowing 21 points or fewer. The Alouettes, I think, have given up exactly 16 points in each of their last 3 games, and the Riders are only giving up 21 points a game over that same span. So we're going to lean on the defenses here, even though this is the highest total of the week. Going to stick under 46.5 points in Montreal, Saskatchewan. Let's go Als 23, Riders 18. There you have it, folks. The picks are in for lucky. It's going to be lucky. Week number 13 in the CFL. We'll go over them here with you one more time. I've got Calgary going to Ottawa to beat the REDBLACKS, and I'm laying the 10.5 points on Calgary in a game that goes over 42.5 points. I've got Hamilton traveling to Edmonton and beating the Elks in Edmonton. I'm taking the points, however. No, I'm not. I'm laying the points on Hamilton. Hamilton minus 4.5. Sorry about that. In a game that goes over the 43 points. I've got Toronto beating BC in Toronto, keeping their home record undefeated for the Argos. I'm laying the 3.5 points on Toronto in a game that goes over 45.5 points. And I've got the Montreal Alouettes at home hanging a loss on the Saskatchewan Roughriders on the tail end of back-to-back roadies. We're taking the 1.5 with the hometown Alouettes in a game that stays under 46.5 points. That's it. Those are your picks for week 13. I hope you enjoy the games. I hope you have a safe and happy Halloween. Please enjoy it, but enjoy it responsibly, of course, as always. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at NerdTees. Thank you so much for listening, so much for watching. Again, make sure you check out Ryan Coop at the Canadian Football Fantasy Mix. Link is in the pinned comment below. Enjoy the games in week 13. We'll see you again in week 14. Just a couple more weeks to go before this abbreviated regular season is Dunskies.